So there you heard India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar addressing the general debate at the UN General Assembly. He made very clear points on how the world right now is facing several challenges, on not just the ones that are unfolding right now in West Asia or the Middle East, where Gaza and now of course Lebanon is concerned, but also with Ukraine. He also mentioned how there is a concentration of production in a lot of countries because of the model of globalization that has been followed that needs to be democratized. He gave the example of India, how it has used various resources that it has had to not only help its own people, be it women and other sections of society that needed all the help they can through a lot of interventions by the government, but also the global south, how India has been bringing the global south together and voicing its issues as well and trying to resolve issues, helping about 78 countries around the world. And he also targeted Pakistan, that it has a single point obsession, it seems, with India and has been using state-sponsored terrorism for so many years against it. But India remains strong, and he also mentioned that actions will have consequences for Pakistan as well. And this is a message that he put across to the world, that reform is what is required in global institutions such as the United Nations, because it has sort of become captive to the past and remains stuck in a bit of a rut ever since it was formed. And it was formed to address the challenge of peace in the world, but right now peace and other issues are most a threat. Let me go across to my colleague Jessica Taneja for more on this. Jessica, you followed what the External Affairs Minister said, and he was very clear on certain points that he made, be it about Pakistan or about reforms in institutions like the UN, global institutions, or for that matter, what kind of a leadership needs to be provided to the world at this stage.
And if you read through the speech that he did just deliver, there were very important points that he did stress on, especially the point where, he said that those who seek to lead would perhaps, have indeed proven on how this entire UN resolution moves forward, or the reforms in the UN move forward, must continue. And let me also point on what the External Affairs Minister did also stressed on. He said both peace and prosperity are equally endangered, keeping in view and talking about the recent escalations that we've seen and also reported just earlier today, and also that we've been witnessing when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. So of course, touching upon those important points, and of course not to forget Pakistan, was mentioned right at the end of the speech, where the External Affairs Minister said that the terror policy that Pakistan continues with will not succeed, and perhaps actions that we see from the Pakistan side, especially when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir, would have consequences. So an all-important message by the External Affairs Minister at the United Nations General Assembly today, summing up India's position on the current situation of how the global affairs are being conducted and the need for an overall reform, and perhaps give more room to multilateralism, not just in words, but also in action.
Certainly. We're also joined by senior former diplomat Ashok Sajjanhar. Good evening to you, Mr. Sajjanhar. Thank you for joining us at this late hour here in Delhi. But what are your impressions about the kind of message that Dr. S. Jaishankar has put out on behalf of India at the topmost global stage that there is, the United Nations, which he says is right now stuck in the past and needs to move forward with some significant changes?
So absolutely, Gautam. Thank you very much for having me. I think the speech by the External Affairs Minister was extremely well-rounded and covered all the points. He started with all the challenges that the global system has been facing, whether it is the COVID-19 pandemic, the world is still suffering from that, or it is the Russia-Ukraine conflict or the Gaza conflict. So these are the challenges that the world is suffering from, and also in terms of the concentration of production in one particular country. And that has been a problem because, in terms of weaponization of the supply chains. So he spoke about the democratization of production of goods, of commodities. That is very important. He gave the example of India as to how India had been able to deal with all the challenges, whether of the economy or of the social system that had been introduced as a result of these challenges. Also as to how India had moved in terms of providing succor to other countries in the world. And he gave this example as to how the development of digitization and fintech in India had been able to help greatly. The theme of the conference, as Gautam, you know, as all the viewers know, that it is leaving no one behind. And that is what India has sought to achieve through the large number of policy measures that it has adopted within the country in terms of providing electricity, providing water, providing facilities to the underprivileged sections of the society. The External Affairs Minister also had a word of advice to Pakistan that its attempts of fomenting and inciting terror against India, that will not succeed. And that was a very clear message, that was a very direct message. And he also gave a very clear message to Pakistan that the only unfinished agenda on this is how the territory illegally occupied by Pakistan, Indian territory illegally occupied by Pakistan of Kashmir, how that is will be returned to India. So I think all in all, a very well-rounded speech. It covers all the issues, whether in terms of the theme of the 69th session of the UN General Assembly, or in terms of you know, what India has been doing and how India can contribute in making the world more peaceful, stable and prosperous.
Well, certainly. Jessica, if I could now turn to you and just tell us in terms of the kind of engagements that the External Affairs Ministers had, coupled with the kind of engagements Prime Minister Modi had when he was in the US just a short while ago, just a few days ago, where one of his events was the UN Summit of the Future as well. What does that tell us about how is India trying to well, not just build relations for its own, but also sort of give direction to which way the world should be progressing?
Well, for the longest time, India did not have to build a case for multilateralism. It was something that, of course, aligned with India's interests and, of course, its foreign policy as well. And looking at how it has expanded that particular aspect of the kind of meetings we're seeing in the United States of the Prime Minister, and also then continued by the External Affairs Minister in New York in the past few days, meeting the German Foreign Minister and various other countries' foreign ministers to that extent, you know, goes on to show that India certainly did not have to necessarily build a case, but a common understanding between nations and the kind of important role India plays and perhaps the kind of representation Asia requires, apart from just China being the member of P5, and that extension to other members with countries including the G4, Brazil, India, Germany and Japan. This certainly could perhaps in the future be in the works, but for the moment, the kind of engagements as we've seen in the recent past, it goes on to show that India is certainly gaining momentum, at least when it comes to its bid for the UNSC, and is, of course, offering that benefit. The country like India would perhaps be of much more importance. And if you go through the speech that the External Affairs Minister just delivered, he also again pointed out to the fact that those who seek to lead often set good examples. So to that effect, in a way, India is positioning itself at the moment as a country which is ready for an extended membership of the UNSC as and when the P5 have a continued decision on it.
Certainly. Ashok Sanjana, if I could ask you about this as well, because we've seen that countries, not just this time around, they have, of course, voiced support for India's place in the Security Council as a permanent member in the past and in the present as well. But where is that process going? Because even if we have 4 of them on board, because it has to be a unanimous decision, China still stands in the way. Now, can China be convinced to accommodate not just India, but other deserving candidates as well?
Yeah, no, you're very right. I think that there has been some progress, some infinitesimal progress, if I could put it this way, because now a decision has been taken to have text-based negotiations, and that is very important. So far, countries have basically been discussing as to, without any text, they have been discussing, if I could to put it this way, in the air, without, they're discussing concepts. Because the idea was, it was mentioned that either let a consensus be built, and once the consensus is built, then we can go on a text-based negotiations. But that is really putting the cart before the horse. And so it was not really leading anywhere. I think now the decision has been taken. And particularly in the Pact for the Future, it has been mentioned that, there will be text-based negotiations. Now, the specific question that you have posed in terms of China, I think if there is a swell of support for India and for some of the other countries like Brazil, like South Africa, like Japan, like Germany, from the African continent also, two of them. So I think if there is a swell of support in the General Assembly, then I think it will be very difficult for China to sort of stay back and continue to exercise its veto, because China is also mindful of its own global position. And I think this is what we are banking on, that we work as far as the other countries are concerned and have, a more than two-thirds majority, more than 128 countries voting for whatever the text that emerges. And China will feel compelled to go along with the voice of the people of the global community, and that is the only way. Otherwise, left to itself, I don't think China is going to revise its position, and we definitely have to have those 5 veto-wielding powers supporting us, supporting the case of India and others whenever there's a reform of the UN Security Council. So this is, I think, the only way to go forward.
Well, let's hope that it happens soon. And while the UN is at reforming, perhaps that veto power should also be looked at. That would be a significant reform if the veto power is finished altogether, and perhaps decisions based on other alternative means could be taken in the world body. Perhaps that is something that could be seriously looked at. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador Sajjan Har, as well as Jessica Taneja, my colleague.